and action.
As one of the most culturally diverse cities, London served as the perfect backdrop for Film Africa 2011. Over a period of 10 days, the Film Africa Festival is going to be showcasing very many different films, exciting, exhilarating, with different themes from all over Africa. Mambo 360 is going to find out about Film Africa 2011.
Bandeko babolingo staff kokiko kufate. Bandeko babolingo staff kokiko kufate. Botia maboko staff ekende liboso.
Richard, as director of the Royal African Society, you've had huge experience in Africa as a journalist, and you've always wanted to push forward the African story, African images. What was the reasoning behind then Film Africa 2011?
Well, the Royal African Society is moving into culture anyway. Its basic mission is establishing a better understanding of Africa in Britain. There is normal Africa, people just getting on with their lives, and it's extraordinarily rich, diverse continent, full of different societies, different stories, a great history. I often think that if Shakespeare was around today, he'd be writing the story of Robert Mugabe, he'd be writing the story of Paul Kagame and the genocide, and he'd be certainly writing about Nigerian politics, because it's almost a matter of life and death, and the stakes are so high.
The opening night at the Ritzy in Brixton featured the award-winning film Microphone. The film expressed strong undercurrents of the Arab Spring resistant movement that swept across most of North Africa in the early part of 2011. A man of many talents, Khaled Abul Naga, the star of the film and celebrated Egyptian actor and human rights activist, spoke to Mambo 360.
Well, Microphone is a very special film. The name, for example, is giving a microphone to those underground voices that usually don't have a stage or a microphone to present their art. It started as a documentary, really, with Ahmed Abdallah, the director, walking the streets of Alexandria, noticing this progressive graffiti everywhere, and he was like very interested. Usually we have writings on the wall, but not a very interesting graffiti art. So he called me and he said, would you be interested to produce or co-produce a documentary about this interesting, he loves graffiti in general. We said, yeah, sure, I was interested, and he found the girl who was doing some of the graffiti, Aya Tare, who's in the film playing her role. And then she introduced him to music bands, and then we found all these underground music bands in the city of Alexandria, mostly youth with very strong socio-political issues that we thought is very worth documenting.
And if those are captured on film, I think they're going to be the great dramas of the 21st century.
Dr. Lindiwe Dovie, as co-director and program manager for Film Africa 2011, what was the organizational thinking behind this year's festival or celebration?
So it was the Royal African Society who commissioned the festival, and Film Africa is a resuscitation of a festival that they commissioned in 2008 called the London African Film Festival that Namvula Rennie, my co-director for Film Africa, and I were both involved in as well. And now we're back with Film Africa, which we intending to be an annual platform for African film. And we just feel that a city like London, which is very cosmopolitan, has a big African diaspora community, needs an annual festival of African cinema to celebrate and support it.
I'm quoting Ronem, one of the revolution young people who works for Google, said it's almost like the power of the people is finally challenging and stronger than the people in power. So, and that is the signs of the new age.
And so I've been trying to identify both trends that we can represent at the festival, but also gaps. So the resistance strand of the festival is responding to the North African revolutions earlier this year, which have obviously sparked resistance movements or protests in other countries in Africa, for example in Uganda. So we felt that was quite demonstrative of what's been going on, and we want to really address current issues.
In the question and answer session, Khaled spoke directly to the audience about microphone and his undoubted passion.
People from all walks of life met in this moment in history, this even epicenter in geography, Tahrir Square, and now they're diverging, but they're drawing the image upside down.
Hailing from Zambia, she is one of Africa's brightest women filmmakers. Her film, Mwanza the Great, was also selected to compete for the Silver Baobab Award for the Best Short African Film.
What was the inspiration behind Mwanza the Great?
I don't often go into films with a huge agenda, you know. Often I do things I speak from my heart, and I did want to speak from my heart, but bear in mind, because it was in Zambia, I wanted to show a different side of Africa. This I knew I wanted to do, whatever story I had or stories I was working on, I wanted to do something that showed us in Zambia especially in a different way than expected.
I hope they're going to win awards and their films will get picked up for mainstream distribution.
It used to be 4% of the industry of women filmmakers. Now it's about 8%, I think, and of them, very few, I'm sure, are from Africa, and even fewer still from Zambia.
We have to talk about money when we're talking about film. You know, it's nice to talk romantically about art and creating art. But if these young filmmakers like Rungano are going to go on to have long careers, which we hope they do,
it's just because they have a group of people working behind them that's making sure it's being seen, it's being put out there, it's being marketed properly. This is what I'd love to see, and for people to take a chance and not be afraid of cinema from Africa, to know that it can be also commercial and also beautiful, you know? That's all I want.
Film Africa also highlighted the growing role of experimental film on the continent. The work of artists such as Nigerian-British director Zina Zaro Wiwa, whose father was author and activist Ken Zaro Wiwa, spoke to Mambo 360.
So I think these kind of film festivals showcases Africans telling African stories. I'm excited in terms of not so much the story that's told, but the way it's told. I feel as if Africans have a lot to give in terms of expanding the notion of form.
As member of the Parliament for the London Borough of Hackney, an area of diverse cultural backgrounds, Diane Abbott was very supportive of what Film Africa was trying to achieve.
I was very excited because I know there's a lot of really interesting and innovative film coming out of the continent of Africa, and this is a wonderful showcase for it. I think unfortunately this summer's riots were seen as an outburst of criminality. But of course, urban riots are the underclass's way of telling you that all is not well with them. And we really need to have to understand what the young people and the older people who were involved in that rioting and looting were trying to say. And writers and filmmakers have a big role to play. I think people appreciate film festivals. The London Film Festival has just finished, and that was in a group of cinemas across the city, and they were all packed. And what people appreciate is the idea that someone has picked out really high quality films for them. And I think the film Africa has the potential to be as big as the London Film Festival, if not bigger.
Making a film to address an issue in a country like Egypt, and that issue comes to fold and becomes something as big as it is right now, you know, to overthrow or sitting president, you know, it shows the foresight and the producing, you know, acumen that goes within these talents of people that come together to make this film.
I could understand the choice of the film, and that it seemed to me Egypt, the Arab Spring, this is an important subject and we want to hear about it at the moment.
In terms of character, in terms of conviction, in terms of interest, you know, it's a very, very fantastic film and is worthy of being the first film to open this festival.
A little bit more skill and a little bit more polish, you know, their techniques get better, and then suddenly there is, you know, I think we'll find ourselves in maybe 5-10 years' time. You know, there'll be a big premiere in London of a massive Nigerian film.
The Film Africa organisers added a further cultural component to the African film experience. They featured some of London's most exciting African-inspired musicians and DJs, including Grupo Lokito, Muntu Valdo, and Bumi Thomas. Namvulu Reni, one of Film Africa's co-directors, was also influential in driving the musical theme of the event.
Well, what we wanted to do this year was really to bring a more coherent cultural experience to people who might not be familiar with African culture, but also for the people of the diaspora to be able to celebrate more fully their culture.
Film Africa 2011 in London appears set to promote and celebrate African cinema, not only for film lovers, but also to those new to African cinema. And with Africa gaining more prominence on the world stage, long may it continue. From Mambo 360, it's goodbye and thank you for joining us. See you next time.